Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patrons, Scott and Mark S. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. Just 7 days after 14.3 rolled out to the early access group, today we learned that 14.3.1 is now also going out to the EA group. So from here, over the next few days, we'd like to see this .1 release go beyond the early access group, and that will be a great indication that that's the branch that'll make it to the wide release. The reviews of 14.3.1 are very limited right now, but Sawyer did say you can now tap on the P parking icon to bring up your different parking options. He said Mad Max on the highway now feels a bit more conservative. He's now having 0 brake stabbing issues with .1, where he had a few on .3. And he said navigation routes and occasional parking alignment still need some work, but overall he thinks this build is ready for wide release. Right now, all eyes are on Cybercab, wondering when it will be deployed to the Robotaxi network. All we know for sure is that the testing of Cybercab nationwide continues to expand. Today, 2 were spotted in Naples, Florida. What that means is we've now seen the Cybercab doing on-road testing in Alaska, California, Nevada, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Illinois, Florida, Washington, D.C., New York, and Massachusetts. And of course, some of those states like California have seen the Cybercab in various different cities. So right now I have it at 10 states and Washington, D.C. If I've missed any, please let me know in the comments below. And I am not including any of the pop-ups or displays for the Cybercab, just where we've seen actual testing. And right now on the Tesla careers page, if you look for data collection supervisors, you'll find 35 results, but one of those is actually for Optimus. The other 34, however, are all for self-driving. And yes, some of these positions are in new states where we haven't yet seen much activity from Tesla in terms of actual autonomous testing. For example, this position is for Devon, Pennsylvania, and these listings don't say it explicitly, but there's a good chance that this actual driving to gather this data in these various states will be done by the Cybercab, which is why, for now, they have the steering wheel. These roles will personally contribute to the AI dataset through your own testing and data collection, and it will audit teams' clips to ensure excellent performance, coach drivers when improvement is needed, and conduct weekly ride-alongs with drivers to ensure quality. Some other new states: St. Louis, Missouri, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, New Orleans, Louisiana, Owings Mills, Maryland, Springfield, New Jersey, Atlanta, Georgia, Nashville, Tennessee, Southfield, Michigan. And just FYI, I'm not reading all of these. There are many other locations where we have seen Tesla have autonomous activity, like Peabody, Massachusetts, where they have been testing the Cybercab, Aurora, Colorado, Draper, Utah, and the rest are all in states where we already know that Tesla is laying the groundwork. And for what it's worth to you, the Robotaxi tracker now has 11 unsupervised vehicles in Austin, up from 9 previously. I did want to clarify, there are some posts out there getting some decent traction right now saying that Tesla has not had a Robotaxi incident since January, which might be true, but the problem is we only have official data from NHTSA as of February 17th this year. The good news is we should be expecting a new monthly report from NHTSA here in the next few days, which should give us data at least through March. So it's true, the last recorded incident, no matter who was at fault or what the damage was in January, but we only have data to February 17th. Anything more recent than that, we just don't have the information yet. And shifting focus to autonomy in the Netherlands and across the EU, it is now official. The Dutch Vehicle Authority, RDW, has notified the European Commission of its plan to seek European Union-wide approval for Tesla's FSD. And importantly, the GM of the type approvals from the RDW said he was confident it could be used safely on all roads in the Netherlands, including Amsterdam. And further, he said if it's good enough for the Netherlands, it is good enough for Europe. A spokesperson for the commission said the Netherlands had informed it that it will present the case to the relevant technical committee in May. If the evidence from test results is satisfactory and if there's support from a majority of member states, the next step would be to prepare an implementing act authorizing the Netherlands to grant EU type approval, allowing an EU-wide rollout. But meanwhile, in the interim, individual countries may decide on their own account to allow the technology using the Dutch approval as a reference point. You can imagine, there are certainly bilateral conversations with regulators in other EU countries, with the RDW prepared to answer questions about its technical conclusions. Now, the GM did say the Dutch European version of FSD will not be exactly comparable with the US version due to the differing regulatory process. Differences include stricter monitoring of whether drivers are paying attention to the road, and a need for any significant software update to the system to be checked with the RDW ahead of time, which to date is similar to what China has been requiring of Tesla. So just know there are going to be some differences, but Elon said, I guess we have different naming conventions in Europe, but this is basically version 14.3. And another difference, at least for now, it looks like Tesla's FSD in Europe is using the max speed offset instead of the speed profiles, meaning the speed can be adjusted with the scroll wheel and the percentage can be adjusted through the main visualization, which, as all of us in the US know, is a feature that we recently lost. And the reason Tesla gave indirectly was that it was basically too complicated to integrate that feature. But we have to remember, FSD is quite mature in the United States, where this rollout in the Netherlands and eventually across the EU is still in the very early days. One other thing I just wanted to clarify, I think some people are now saying that the vote for EU-wide approval is now going to be held May 5th because of a few posts circulating on X. These posts shared the schedule for the TCMV, the Technical Committee of Motor Vehicles, which is the regulatory body that will host this voting, and their next meeting is indeed May 5th this year. But so far, I've not seen anything official that the vote for Tesla's supervised FSD will be held on that day. However, it is accurate to say that is the soonest date that it could happen. But just know if it doesn't happen in May and that's too soon for a vote, the next option would be June, and then after that, it wouldn't be until October. So whenever they decide to gather for this vote, the RDW will present all of the evidence to the 27 member states, and then at least 55% of the states, meaning 15 of the 27, will have to vote to approve to get the majority. And further, those states have to represent at least 65% of the overall population. And if the vote goes well, then there could be an EU-wide approval shortly thereafter. But as I said, if for whatever reason the vote does not go well and they don't get a majority, individual member states can still choose on their own to recognize this type approval through the Netherlands. So the main takeaway is that the expectation for now is that at the May 5th meeting is when the RDW will present the case for Tesla's supervised FSD for EU-wide approval. And the expectation is that the vote will be held at that meeting. But there's at least a non-0% chance that the vote doesn't actually take place until the following meeting, the one that is scheduled to be held on June 30th. And that, of course, would depend on the level of questioning and concern from some of the member states. But the two dates we need to remember are May 5th and June 30th, and by the latter, we can hope to have EU-wide approval. But one more time, even if that vote fails, each individual member state can still choose on their own to adopt the RDW approval. And Ashok said the European regulation is followed by a lot more countries than just the ones in the EU. And just a few countries that Ashok may have been referring to: Norway, the UK, Iceland, Switzerland, and Turkey. And there are others like Japan, India, and Thailand that can also recognize this RDW type approval. So it's safe to say the momentum globally for Tesla's supervised FSD has never been stronger than it is right now. Now, if we go country by country and have a look at Tesla's estimated cumulative fleet size in each EU country, plus non-EU countries that do have a high likelihood of following this RDW approval, like Norway, the UK, Switzerland, Iceland, and Turkey, then from there, we can assume that roughly 30% of this fleet will be AI4 vehicles, because right now this rollout is only for those vehicles. That means the hardware for fleet across all of these countries could be in the neighborhood of 450,000 vehicles as a midpoint. Now, of course, the take rate is not going to be 100%, but I think 15 to 20% given the momentum and all of the hype right now with all of the videos on social media is reasonable. And of course, this exercise is really for the remainder of this year because it's going to take some time for all of these countries to actually have it approved. But my point is we're on the verge of potentially having hundreds of thousands of Tesla vehicles with AI4 that now have access to supervised FSD if they so choose. which of course is more social media activity, more butts in seats, more friends talking to their friends and coworkers and so on. And I won't share the videos, but there have already been many highlight clips of FSD performing very well, much like we know it. But there are also still limitations with things like lane selection and reading and understanding signs. And I've already seen some problems with speed control and hesitation, which again should not be a surprise. But for me, one of the most exciting things about this whole process is that all of this new data that Tesla is going to gather will not be siloed like the data Tesla gathers in China, meaning all of these learnings can actually improve the FSD model in North America. Like this review, so far FSD is really fantastic and safe. It's so natural and relaxing. My wife tried it and loved it. I'm super happy to have it. But at the same time, I expected it to be even further along by now. This morning it did not move on green once. It stopped randomly in the middle of the road once, and it did not do a very good job at parking. Nothing very concerning, but not intervention free on relatively few kilometers. And Sven actually reached out to Norway's Public Road Directorate and did get a response. They said the SVV, the regulatory body in Norway, is now receiving many inquiries from the public. We understand many Tesla owners who have been misled by the manufacturer's marketing are impatient and want clear information. Then they go on to talk about the process we just explained, and they said member states have the opportunity to ask questions before a possible vote. If there are many questions that can't be answered satisfactorily, the vote may be postponed. So there you go, guys. I'm not just making things up. That vote might not happen until June 30th. I'm not saying I think that's the case, it's just a possibility. Norway, as an EEA country, does not have the right to vote in the process, but it can ask questions. But they said we have no basis to give a timeline for this process. And they went on to share how they worked with Ford and Blue Cruise to ask for a few extra special things from Ford before they actually approved it. But they said we have no basis to give a timeline for this as it will depend on the response from Tesla Norway. Example, specifics for Norway, they still have questions about winter performance, which is absolutely fair. So I would expect at least a slight bump in Tesla sales across the EU throughout the summer and through the back half of this year, given the renewed interest in Tesla from this FSD news. Because as we know, this is a technology you have to experience to have the light bulb go on to realize that nobody else has anything like this that a customer can own. The legal software company DocketWise just announced a data breach affecting over 116,000 clients. But the worst part about it, the breach actually happened October of last year, and the company didn't tell anyone impacted until just now. Which brings me to the sponsor of this video, Delete Me. Think about this for a second. These people gave their most sensitive information to their immigration attorney, and then a software company sitting between them and the lawyer gets compromised. I just want to keep making this point. This stuff can happen to anyone, anytime, with the most sensitive information that you give to even trusted parties. So this is why I will choose to do whatever I can to protect my family from this happening to us. And of course, I think you all should do the same as well. One of the most practical things you can do right now is remove your personal information from these people search sites, which is exactly what Delete Me does. These are sites that pop up when somebody Googles your name and finds your address, your number, age, relatives, which is all publicly available for anyone to see. Delete Me removes you from these sites and then rescans every quarter because your data constantly gets re-added as you engage online. My report from January saved me about 150 hours of time, and given that I've used Delete Me for over 3 years, that means they have saved me thousands of hours calling these companies one by one. And Delete Me has glowing reviews on Trustpilot, and this is crucial because Delete Me cannot game these in any way. So if you'd like to support Electrified and protect your family, you can head to joindeleteme.com/electrified to get 20% off using my code Electrified linked below, or by using the QR code on the screen. The president of Tesla China just said that Giga Shanghai has the potential to build Optimus in the future. He said Giga Shanghai could provide a golden key to the mass production of robots. Like other Tesla factories, Giga Shanghai can shoulder important responsibilities in manufacturing all new products, including robots, to make our contributions to the company. We are highly confident in welcoming the arrival of a new era of robots. He did not, however, elaborate whether Tesla would assemble robots at existing facilities in Shanghai or construct a new plant for the business. Remember, on the Q4 call earlier this year, Elon said, "I do think that by far the biggest competition for humanoid robots will be from China. China is incredibly good at scaling manufacturing. China is very good at AI, very good at manufacturing, and will definitely be the toughest competition for Tesla." And we know Giga Shanghai is Tesla's most cost-effective manufacturing site. But back to Elon on the call, he said China is next level. But he did say this: "We think Optimus will be much more capable than any robot we are aware of under development in China. We think we'll be ahead in terms of the real-world intelligence, the electromechanical dexterity, especially the hand design, which is by far the hardest thing in the robot." But it would not surprise me one bit to see Tesla learn how to produce Optimus at one site for a year plus before they start exporting that manufacturing process anywhere else. So my guess would be we don't see production of Optimus from Giga Shanghai until late 2027, maybe into 2028. A few months ago, I had an Electrified community member shoot me an email saying, "Wouldn't it be nice if we had the data on how many lives were saved by Tesla's FSD?" And while that specific data may never exist, it did spark something. So over the past few weeks, I've been looking into data from NHTSA for the past 10 years. My goal looking into this was to answer the question, if we had a level 4 or 5 robotaxis available during that time period, how many of those road deaths that happened could have been avoided due to human behavioral issues that robotaxis would not exhibit? First, every fatal crash in the US gets reported to FARS, the Fatality Analysis Reporting System. This covers 100% of traffic fatalities. Over the past 10 years, the number of fatalities has been just over 389,000. Further, that data is broken down into behavioral categories: alcohol, distraction, speeding, and being drowsy. But the problem is, as you might guess, there's plenty of overlap with those 4 categories, meaning somebody that was under the influence could also be drowsy, could also be speeding, etc. So a long story short, I used a very conservative approach where every time I had to make an assumption, I did so conservatively to try to come up with this overlap factor to remove those duplicates. And fast forwarding to the main takeaway, if you adjust for all of those overlaps over the past decade, if we would have had Tesla's supervised FSD or some comparable level 4 or 5 system, the number of preventable estimated deaths would be in the neighborhood of 200,000. Specifically, the range was between 198,000 and 215,000. And as we know, the reason this checks out is because supervised FSD cannot drink alcohol, it does not get tired, it is never drowsy, and it is never distracted. And remember, that is only accounting for those human behaviors that a robotaxi would never exhibit. So for me, all along, I've always felt like this should be a bigger part of the conversation, and we know that Tesla will get so much criticism when there are accidents and injuries with FSD. But please, let's all do what we can to shift the narrative to not forget things like this. We're talking about roughly 20,000 lives every single year in the United States that could be saved by removing these human limitations. And bear in mind, with this data, as you'll see year by year, the number of distraction fatalities was just over 3,000 every year. But the number of injuries thanks to distraction is orders of magnitude higher, in the neighborhood of 250,000 every year. So I primarily focused on fatalities, but we cannot forget about all of the injuries that could also be avoided. So really, what Tesla is doing here goes so far beyond just money and investing and technology and all of the things that we so often focus on. And for me, taking the time to think through and work through data like this really makes me appreciate Tesla that much more, which frankly, I didn't even know was possible. I'm sure many of you saw the headline of Honda's CEO taking a trip to China and what he said. He talked about how the companies there were churning out so many products in such a short amount of time, and he said, "We have no chance against this." And he told his suppliers, "We must act quickly to accelerate development." Jim Farley just said, speaking of China, "They have enough production capacity in China with existing factories to serve the entire North American market, put us all out of business. And the former Toyota CEO recently told suppliers during a meeting that unless things change, the company's very existence could be at risk. Unless things change, we will not survive. I want everyone to acknowledge the sense of crisis. But what people weren't saying is that Honda just canceled 2 of its own EVs, the Zero SUV and sedan, along with a revival of the Acura RSX. We know it's booking a nearly $16 billion loss related to EV write-offs, and the 2 Afeela EVs planned with Sony are also DOA. Honda sales in China were about 1.6 million in 2020, and it's down to 640,000 as of last year. So they've effectively been cut in half. Speaking of half, only about half of its manufacturing footprint is being utilized, well below the 70 to 80% typically needed in the auto industry to turn a profit. And just know Sato from Toyota is no longer the CEO, he's now the Chief Industry Officer and serves on the board. But tying this all together, Jim Farley just said that allowing Chinese automakers to sell their cars in the US would be devastating to American manufacturing. We should not let them into our country. Manufacturing is the heart and soul of our country, and for us to lose that to those exports would be devastating to our country. He said, I sure hope we don't allow them to come across the border, speaking of Canada's Chinese cars. Keeping these vehicles out of America should have a big impact on upcoming negotiations to rework the trade deal between the US, Canada, and Mexico. And as you might expect, Farley's arguing that the subsidies that Chinese companies get from the government gives them an unfair advantage to cut prices and decimate domestic automakers in the US. He said there's no way this is a fair fight. And look, he certainly has a point, but I'm just saying I think it's also true that even if they were not getting subsidies, the cream of the crop in China would still likely decimate the legacy automakers in America. I'm guessing most of you have already seen Tesla's signature edition of the Model S and X as a farewell to these vehicles. Only 350 total will ever be made, and these are invite only, so you cannot go to the configurator and order one. So I won't run through the specs, but I do really wish this garnet red was more widely available along with the gold brake calipers, which I think is an awesome color scheme. But nice to see Tesla do something special to sunset these vehicles properly. Tesla's spring software update has been announced. By far the biggest part of this, there will be a new app in the in-car UI for FSD, but for now it's only going to be for AI for vehicles. But there will be tutorials and a brand new dashboard with a lot more granular information about your FSD usage and the ability to earn streaks and so on. And I will share there are rumblings that this might be Tesla preparing for more options to buy FSD, meaning maybe you could rent it when you have a road trip coming up, something other than just the monthly option. Now, please hear me when I say I'm not saying this is likely, I'm just saying that I'm hearing through the grapevine it's a possibility. Grok will finally be getting a wake command, which is hey Grok, and you can close it by saying goodbye, plus you'll be able to have reminders based on your location. Something like remind me to pick up milk when I'm near home. Pet mode gets some new basic customizations. The parking visualization for new Model 3 and Ys is supposed to be enhanced. You can now have multiple trips if you want to individually track your energy stats by drive. The sketchpad gets some updates. Model S and X vehicles now get custom wraps. One of my favorites, the accent lights now turn red when an object is in your blind spot and your turn signal is engaged, or when an approaching object is detected while parked. For the new Model 3 and Ys with Premium Auto, there's a new immersive sound. You can now automatically install software updates. Weather maps get improvements. Dash cam footage can now extend up to 24 hours, and you can save any clip for permanent storage on your Tesla. Apple Music and Spotify get some minor updates, and passengers in the back can now view and interact with maps on the rear display while your Tesla navigates the route. So definitely not the most exciting software update ever, but I'm guessing most of the attention was put into this new FSD app. For now, a very small number of owners have received the update, but that rollout should be gradual over the next few days. And it certainly could go wide before the end of April. From the Delaware Chancery Court, we got a new opinion granting motions to dismiss. The short story here is, given the timing with which Tesla changed to being domiciled in Texas, Elon and Tesla filed motions to dismiss these lawsuits because they said, hey, we're now in Texas and these were filed in Delaware. And the judge said the defendant's motions to dismiss are therefore granted. Meaning, these 3 derivative lawsuits no longer exist in the Delaware courts, and if the plaintiffs want to bring these motions again, they'll have to do so in the Texas courts. And in the opinion piece, it said after Tesla announced its proposal to redomesticate and adopt a Texas forum selection bylaw, stockholders filed 3 derivative lawsuits in the Delaware court, which have been consolidated or coordinated in the present action. Days, and in one instance hours, after the lawsuits were filed, Tesla stockholders voted to approve the redomestication and adopt the Texas forum selection bylaw. On the present motions, the defendants asked the court to enforce that bylaw and dismiss the actions in favor of a Texas forum. And again, those motions from Elon and Tesla have been granted. So in my opinion, no need to get into the specifics of these cases now because currently they don't exist, so we'll wait and see if the plaintiffs decide to bring them again in Texas. Add this to the list of things you love to see. We got the Cox data for US auto sales in Q1. Looking for Tesla, you'll see their Q1 2025 market share was 43.2%. Fast forward to Q1 of this year and it's now up to 54.2%, meaning Tesla's market share in the US is now back up above 50%. But we have to clarify that's despite its own EV sales being down 8% year over year. So obviously it has more to do with the rest of the EV industry pulling way back than it does with Tesla's own sales increasing. But the one Tesla vehicle I'm the most interested in right now is the Cybertruck. It did 3,519 units in Q1 this year compared to 6,406 in Q1 last year, meaning sales of the Cybertruck are down 45% year over year. And yes, the Cybertruck was the best-selling EV truck in the US in Q1, but we have to say it's not a very high bar. One other thing to note, the lower-priced Cybertruck will not hit these sales results until Q2 and beyond, and depending on the delivery timing, it might not be until Q3, but it's just a fact that so far Cybertruck sales have been abysmal relative to expectations. And zooming out to total EV sales in the US for Q1, they were down 27% year over year. Some of you guys know my benchmark for when a vehicle deserves our attention is over 10,000 units per quarter. Well, on page 1 of this data, a grand total of 0 vehicles actually hit that metric for Q1. Then on page 2, we continue to scroll, and other than Tesla, the only vehicle over 10,000 units for the quarter was the Toyota BZ, and it was just barely over at 10,029 units. So other than Tesla and the Toyota BZ, not a single electric vehicle did over 10,000 units in the US in Q1. So for those of us rooting for EV adoption, it is a quite sad state of affairs at the moment. This week, Canadians will get their first chance to see the Tesla Semi in person. This during Truck World at the International Center in Mississauga, Ontario. However, registration for this event is closed. But Truck World attracts trucking executives, fleet operators, suppliers, and government stakeholders. And at this event, the Tesla Semi will be a part of the ride and drive experience. There were some videos making the rounds of a fire at BYD, but I just wanted to clarify this was in a parking garage, not a BYD factory. And the early investigations are saying the cause of the fire was idle construction equipment that a contractor left on site. And somehow that sparked and started the fire. Tesla Charging said, "We've now made it easy for customers with free supercharging to only be routed to superchargers where their free supercharging always applies." So in the in-car UI under the navigation tab, you'll now see a toggle for only add superchargers where free supercharging is accepted. Today we learned that Rivian and Redwood have a new partnership to deploy battery energy storage at Rivian's factory in Illinois. Using more than 100 Second Life Rivian battery packs, Redwood and Rivian's solution will initially provide 10 megawatt hours of dispatchable energy to reduce cost and grid load during peak demand periods. Rivian will provide EV battery packs to Redwood, who will integrate them into a Redwood energy system. So I know it's not the most exciting news ever, but I'll take every chance I get to hammer home the point of these Second Life use cases for these battery packs. Nick Patane shared this video of the Tesla Semi and specifically the mirrors showing some of these cameras built into the side view mirrors, and specifically there are 3 cameras on each mirror. Today we got a rare update from Tesla Insurance. They said with the latest version of the safety score version 3.0, every mile you drive with supervised FSD enabled will receive a score of 100. This allows you to maintain a higher average safety score over time, resulting in lower monthly insurance premiums. But here's the catch. This only applies to new policies in Indiana, Tennessee, Texas, Arizona, Virginia, and Illinois. So on one hand, it's great to get an update about Tesla Insurance, but on the other hand, it's very limited in what they're telling us, and the question remains, what about existing policies? Per the usual, more information is likely to trickle out in the days and weeks ahead. Tesla stock closed the day at $364.20, up 3.34%, while the NDX was up 1.81%. The volume was 6% below the average. Don't forget, check out Delete Me linked below for anyone interested. As always, I can't thank you enough for supporting the channel in that way. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.